Hello, everyone. We are very honored to have with us today Sydney Skybetter, a choreographer, educator, speaker, thinker, collaborator, founder of numerous research and arts organizations, and now is director of undergraduate studies in theater arts and performance studies at Brown University. So, Sydney, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Given your very tenured and extensive experience in both artistic and academic realms, what do you think the role of the arts should be in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics curriculums?
For many years, I would be kind of a token artist in groups, working groups of engineers and computer scientists. And there was always like a not subtle kind of tokenizing work that happens. And then like everybody goes back to business as usual when the artist is like uninvited from the room. Even with like STEM to STEAM, this sort of notion of like inviting A for art into STEM and make it STEAM. Performs the same kind of tokenizing thing where it's like, okay, we have artists narrowly involved in these creative practices, and for me that was always very revealing of the kind of power dynamics at play where artists had to be invited. They weren't naturally or inevitably going to be in the room.
Just to say they've done it, as opposed to really engaging with what it does.
That's right. And so for me, this question of like art interfacing with STEM, it's not just about like a more plural research community. It's about creating things that aren't harbingers of violent society to come. I'm interested in working with computer scientists and engineers and scientists so as to imbue a sense of bodily ethics and a sense of responsibility for the body, because without that, we've seen the destabilizing effects that these body-centered technologies can have. This is actually now something that I work with my students to teach or to like wrestle with. Like, because on one hand, like I always want artists to be better resourced, always. However, what happens when the resourcing of that artist perpetuates certain kinds of violences or perpetuates certain kinds of inequities or perpetuates the treatment of either artists as a class or people, certain people more generally? Like there is an ethical matrix at play that is intentionally and I think tactically hidden. We have to be mindful of how these invitations are situated, right? We have to be mindful of the kinds of power, the kinds of authority that are invested or that are vested or reified when an invitation is offered. That transaction is only the beginning of dynamics and performances and utterances, all of which demarcate power and class and privilege and ownership.
You are now teaching at Brown University and you have a group of students that are sort of the ones. How are you going to inspire that next generation of artists and creators to move the arts forward, to advance the arts?
It seems to be, I think, my job less to teach choreographic practice or dancerly practice as it has been, and more to introduce all of the ways that contemporary technologies ridiculously complicate how we understand dance and performance and choreography and choreographics. So again, like my role then is more as facilitator than like pedagogue, um, which also gets to this question of inspiration. I think it's less my job to inspire, but it's more about showing what an interesting problem dance can be, like what an interesting problem the body is, and how gloriously impossible the kinds of questions emerge from this chaos.
So, as a means of survival, dance is now performing in this present time almost exclusively on a digital stage. So, what would you caution or perhaps challenge everyone to consider in this new time?
People have been doing phenomenal work on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok for years. Like performing on screen, performing online, it's not new at all. It's more exhausting now, and more of us do it. But there's such a tradition of brilliant artists who have been doing this stuff for like a really long time that I think is worth noting. Like my hope is that like we can then look back in this moment and the Zoom aesthetics and like the moment where we're all like taking ballet bars via Zoom as like, oh gosh, that was hard and dumb. Let's never do that again. After the COVID moment is over, like I don't think that the kind of telepresence that Zoom represents is going away. Like I think we're going to be seeing a lot more classes that are taken online. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more online performances, but I think if anything, it will be taken more seriously. Like, so for years and years and years, people have been like performing online in all sorts of ways that have been very deep, but also very marginalized. Namely, to my knowledge, we have not nearly adequately figured out how to compensate artists for their creativity and time using platforms like these. And
Bravo for saying that. That's a huge
right, well,
thing.
so like,
Yes.
and that's not to say that the previous system of like ticketing and going to theaters and like having a ballet company, like not to say that that was particularly equitable, but like it was a supply chain and a value chain that we could like track. When we create performances on Facebook Live, Facebook captures all of that value. It captures all of that money. It captures all of that attention. And the creativity and the brilliance of the artists is made all the more ephemeral, all the more digital it becomes. I'm very tactically optimistic for what going online kind of means for us in terms of our creativity, but I am very concerned for what this means in terms of our ability to have a professional working class of artists who are able to sustain themselves with things like money.
So, as a choreographer, how has this time affected your work as the work that you produce?
This isn't new information, but it has made me realize just how dependent our workforce is on childcare.
The nuts and bolts.
Totally. And so this is, I think, another perilous moment for the dance community because us competing with all of us it's like it's been this kind of abstract menace of online presence because the internet was large. But now that like legit every dance company on the planet is trying to come up with an online strategy, but it has never reached the kind of scale or urgency or competitive velocity that it has right now. And to navigate those competitive dynamics requires a kind of infrastructure that, to my knowledge, the dance community does not yet have. My hope is that we develop it. My hope is that we get better at being online because we're going to be here for a while.
And this period is sort of forcing everyone to do that. So, what do you think? And you were sort of going into it a little bit, but what do you think should be changed or we should look for as we move forward?
The way things were, like, can never be again. I want to hold some space for the mourning of that while also giving as much oxygen and as many resources as I can to the artists and specifically artist technologists who are radically reconsidering what it means to be in community, radically reconstituting what it means to be an embodied dance performer, completely exploding what it means to choreograph or be choreographed upon, because they have notions, theories of affinity and community that are not like the ones that we've had before. So I'm interested in learning from the young choreographic technologists who are inventing new ways of choreographing on robots or choreographing in virtual reality or who literally make their own artificial intelligences and like choreograph dances on the basis of an AI. What they have been able to do and what they've been doing again for years, paraphrasing William Gibson, like the choreographic future is here, it's just not been evenly distributed. So by foregrounding the work of these young artists and by promoting them however I can, my hope is that their feminist future becomes all of ours, that we can share in their brilliance and the kinds of ways of imagining community. Again, like the old ways, I want to own that as a source of vitality and value and community and sustenance, but like it was always horrifically inequitous. Like it was never good at being anything other than a surface community that horrifically devalued women, was horrifically ableist, was incredibly racist and ableist, and like it was like incredibly toxic in so many ways that we know, and we've known for years. We've known this. This is not mysterious. My utterly naive hope is that these artists will imagine ways of communing and creating art and artistic communities that are vastly more equitable and ultimately more interesting than the ones that we had.
Sydney, thank you so much. You are like a wealth of information, and just, gosh, we could carry on for such a long time. You have so many thoughts and so much passion, and great. Thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.